So let's talk about how to find the standard deviation from the frequency distribution, not just a list of data. So if we look at this, we have our data items listed on the left-hand side and the frequencies listed on the right-hand side. So remember, the first step in finding the standard deviation is always finding the mean. So we know to find a mean from a frequency distribution, we do the data item times the frequency plus the data item times the frequency, and we repeat this for all of the rows. Then remember, we need to divide by the total number of items. So in a frequency distribution, we find the total number of items by adding up all the frequencies. So in my denominator, I'm going to add up all the frequencies. When you plug that in your calculator, we're going to end up with 18.8. Then we can go through that process that we talked about to find our standard deviation. So we can make our table where we're going to start with the data item. Then we'll do the data item minus the mean. Then we'll take that answer, so the data item minus the mean, and we'll square it. And then we're going to see, and we'll talk about it, that when we're dealing with a frequency distribution, we're going to have one more step. So our data items are 15, 17, 20, 23, and 25. So when I do the data item minus the mean, right, I'm thinking 15 minus 18.8, which gives me negative 3.8. Then I have to do 17 minus 18.8, which gives me negative 1.8. Then I'm going to do 20 minus 18.8. That gives me 1.2. Then I'm going to do 23 minus 18.8, which gives me 4.2. And I'm going to do 25 minus 18.8, which gives me 6.2. Now, what I need to do is square all of those numbers. So I'm going to have that negative 3.8 squared. Remember that negative times a negative is going to give me a positive, so it's going to give me 14.44. Then I'm going to have negative 1.8 squared, which is going to give me 3.24. I'm going to do 1.2 squared, which gives me 1.44. 4.2 squared, which equals 17.64. And 6.2 squared, which equals 38.44. Now here's that extra step. If you think about it, this would give us the standard deviation if 15 happened once, and 17 happened once, and 20 happened once, and 23 happened once, and 25 happened once. So our extra step is that we have to account for the frequencies, that these items happened more than once. So what we're going to do is take that answer that we just got, the data item minus the mean squared, and we're going to multiply it times the frequency. So I'm going to take that 14.44 and I'm going to multiply it times 5, because that's the frequency that 15 happened in the table. And that's going to give me 72.2. Then I'm going to take that 3.24 and multiply it by 6. That gives me 19.44. I'm going to take that 1.44 and multiply it by 4, the frequency that we got for 20 from that table, which gives us 5.76. We're going to take 17.64 and multiply it times 3, which gives us 52.92. And then I'm going to take that 38.44 and multiply it by 2, which gives us 76.88. Then we'll continue with our normal process for finding the standard deviation. So I'm going to add all of these numbers up. When you add them all up, we get that 227.26. Then remember, we need to divide by n minus 1. Remember, n was the total number of data items we had. So if we look back at the mean, the total number of data items we had was in that denominator. So when we add all those numbers up, we're going to get 20. So our n equals 20. So that means n minus 1 is 19. So I'm going to take that 227.26. I'm going to divide it by 19. And then remember, our last step is to take the square root. So if I do that, I have 227.26 divided by 19, and I want the square root of that. It gives me in our calculator about 3.458475478. Most of the time on MyLabs Plus, it seems like they're asking us to round standard deviation to the nearest hundredth. So I'm going to take this 8. It tells me to round up. So we're going to find that our standard deviation is about 3.46.